Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Edward Redux, and welcome back to another technology video talking about cameras again. And yes, this video is being shot on the iPhone 5C, EOS R5C by Canon, and I only bring that up because, well, one, someone asked about it, and two, I want to show you one of the coolest cameras that I have handled apart from the 5C. In fact, it actually might be cooler because of how much more normal it appears to be compared to the 5C, which is obviously a cinema camera and not just a normal picture camera, but it has a sister. Actually, yeah, sure. It has a sister, and it is called the EOS R5. I don't have one of those, but from reviews and complaints and stuff I can see on the internet just by Googling it, I can tell that it had a lot of problems, a lot of glaring problems. Problems that I have pointed out multiple times in my series on Canon, which I should really make a playlist for at this point since I've made so many videos on them. But yeah, it overheats way too fast. Who would have thunk from, you know, a 2018 processor being used to record at 8K with another, you know, 2018 era silicon processor being used alongside it? Of course it's going to overheat in like 2 minutes. Duh. That's because it didn't have a fan and it didn't have any cooling vents. At least I think it didn't have any cooling vents. I know it definitely didn't have a fan because that was why it was overheating. The R5C does have a fan, and that's why I'm recording with it, because that's the only camera Canon makes that seems to be useful for this purpose. Which is sad because it's a little more complicated than a normal camera like this. But I'm going to show you one that isn't. And it's actually from basically the same line. It's the same R line as the R5C and the R6 Mark II and the R8 and every one of those cameras. They cost more than the R6 Mark II though. That's because it's technically an upgrade from the R6 Mark II, a direct upgrade in fact. And the R5C is actually a deviant. I don't know if that's the correct term. It is a version of this camera that I'm about to show you, and it is called the Canon EOS R5 Mark II. The Canon EOS R5 Mark II fixes a lot of the problems from the original R5. From what I can tell, it is actually a response to how well the R5C has been in terms of, you know, cooling, because, you know, if you're going to shoot video on your camera, you kind of need to have either decent silicon or decent cooling. And Canon definitely doesn't have decent silicon, so they had to settle for better cooling. But where's the cooling on this? There's no cooling vents, are there? There's actually a cooling vent right here. You can just barely see it. It is right there. That is a cooling vent. And why is that so exciting? Well, it's because there's another cooling vent at the bottom. Now, you might be confused on why these are here, because when you turn on the camera, it doesn't seem to have any fan. Camera's on, you can record stuff, or take a picture or whatever. And you can hear stuff, like, you can definitely hear something, but that's not a fan. That seems to be maybe the internal stabilization, the IBIS, I don't know. But it's definitely not a fan because there's no air. There's no air coming out of these vents. And let me just prove that to you. If there's air coming out of this vent, you wouldn't be able to hear me right now. But yeah, so I'm going to talk about why those are there in a little bit, or more like how you use them. We already know why they're there, because it's freaking obvious. But I'll tell you how they're used in a minute. So, I'm going to start with video quality because I made the mistake of saying that last in the R5C video. So video quality is excellent. It's not as good as the R8. The R8 was outstanding, the best 4K 60 footage I have ever captured. However, being basically the upgraded version of the R5, and you know, that being further up the chain than the R8, it is very good. I don't know how to objectively show how good it is, but let me just say that the R5C is only a little bit better, and that's probably because it's just more optimized for video than this is. I can't get an image to look the same through these two cameras, even though they probably have the same sensor. But yeah, I don't know what to tell you. This just captures a little bit lower quality video than the R5C does, but that kind of makes sense, and also kind of not. But it has a lot of the R5C-isms. So over here you can see that there is a little flap right here, which I can't remember what this covers. I think it's mini, I was gonna say mini coax. No, it's probably mini XLR. Now you can see that. It kind of looks like mini XLR. I'm not even sure if that's a thing, but if mini XLR is a thing, that's probably exactly what that is. I don't know why it's on the front. Don't ask me. Ask Canon why they designed their camera like something I'm not going to say. I'm not going to go over all the controls again. If you want to see all the controls and what they all do and mean, for the most part, for my knowledge anyway, you go watch the R5C video I did. But I will say though that there are a few differences here from the R5C. For one, this used to be the off switch, and it used to be between video off and photo. And turning it to photo or video would turn it on into that mode, and it was basically the R5C is basically a dual booted camera because it has like 2 separate firmwares for each one of those settings, photo or video. But that also means you can't shoot photos at the same time as you're shooting video, or a couple seconds after. You have to wait like 10 seconds to shoot a photo if you just shot a video. But on this one, the switching is instant. As you can see on the screen here, I'm in video mode. You can see that, you can tell that by the video icon up here, and the fact that I can, press record, shoot a video. It says recording right here. And I can press it again and it stops recording. But then if I flip this thing here, it switches into photo mode. So this camera is a good way of recording very decent video, but also shooting very decent photos pretty much 1 second after the other, which has annoyed me several times. You can't do that on the R5C, like especially with how long the R5C takes to change from photo mode to video mode. It takes like 10 seconds. It's kind of outrageous. But yeah, so that slaps. And actually, what's weird about this camera is shooting at 4K 60, which is again the only thing I care about, it doesn't seem to overheat. It gets close, but it doesn't overheat. In fact, I left this recording for 6 hours. And why did I leave it recording for 6 hours? Exactly 6 hours, that's when it stopped. And from that I can assume that that's just the recording limit of this camera. It won't shoot for longer than that no matter what you do. It didn't fill up my card. It came close, but it didn't fill up my card. It was about 450 gigs, and my card is like 512, so that's weird. So it didn't overheat, and I'm not totally sure why this is, because technically it should overheat faster if there's no fan or airflow through these vents. Yeah, in there. Yeah, you can't really see that, but inside you can see that there's a bunch of empty space, probably next to where some kind of a heat sink is, or heat spreader in the camera, which you blow heat through this, or sorry, you blow air through this, not heat. That would be bad, that would be counterproductive. And this is the exhaust, and it just blows up here, which that's awesome. But how would you do that with this camera? Because there's no fan in here, which I'm not really sure why. These should come with fans, especially if there's goddamn vents, as standard hardware. But I guess since everyone doesn't need it, and only some people do, like me and a lot of other people, just not enough people for them to build a fan in here. So instead, what you have to do is blow another $400 above what you've blown for this camera, which I think this camera costs around 3 or 4 grand or so. Yeah, so you have to blow another like 400 bucks in addition to that to buy a grip, a battery grip. Now we saw the battery grip that I got for the Canon R5C. That was an off-brand one, but that wouldn't have mattered anyway because the official one didn't have a fan either, because the R5C has a fan internally. So how did they get a freaking fan into the R5 Mark II since it doesn't have one? Well, you take this battery grip, you slot it in, and you screw it on wrong way. I don't like how these go on. It seems like a very unofficial process, but it's on. The camera's not on, but the grip is on. Now it looks like an R3 or an R1. It looks like one of those giant ass cameras with a big badonkadonk on the bottom. This grip is much nicer than the off-brand one that I have for the 5C as well, because it has like the door comes open like that, and then batteries, just slot out like this. Going like this. Held in with springs and lock it like that. I can actually flip this up with my finger instead of the unofficial one, which I only could if I tried really hard. This one's really easy, and it's an official Canon product. It just costs, like $300, $400. Batteries not included. But what makes this special is it has, down there, that is a vent. I believe that is the intake, and there's the exhaust. And let me show you how that works. Let me just turn the camera on. An error prevented shooting. Turn the camera off and on, again, reinstall the battery. Error 80. Well, I've never seen that before. Maybe it's because I'm using the off-brand batteries in this grip and it just doesn't want to work with those. So yeah, first power E6 NHs, go screw yourselves, I guess. I want to put two 6Ps in, which is actually what you're supposed to be using with this camera. I'm supposed to be using this LPE6P batteries instead of the off-brand ones I'm using, which are NHs. This is an official NH, by the way. So yeah, don't use these with the R5II, get these 6Ps. So I'm gonna slot those in and just show you how that works. All you do is, just put them in. Grabs them automatically. Just close the door, switch, and Bob's your auntie. Eventually it notices the batteries are there and it turns on. It's the fan. What an idea. Who knew you could cool a frickin' camera off, right? So yeah, it says right down there that the fan is on. I'm not sure what, oh yeah, LAN and fan, that's kind of funny. So yeah, this has a freaking Ethernet port on it. I don't think this is 10 gig, but I'm not sure what use it would have if it wasn't. I can't get the damn thing open. I have no nails. So yeah, I'm sure that's not 10 gig Ethernet, because I feel like this grip would cost a lot more if it was. But then again, if it wasn't 10 gig, I'm not sure what you'd do with it, because you can't push RAW over it, so I'm not sure what the point would be. You'd have to use a card anyway. But if it is 10 gig, that's freaking awesome. Let's turn this camera on and let's see. I'm actually gonna prove to you that it has a fan in it now. You can hear it. And you can feel it. Probably can't hear what I'm saying anymore, unless I have the wind filter on, which I probably do. This is definitely the exhaust. Actually, when I turned on this, when I put the grip on for the first time, the fan was blazing. It was just freaking going off. And actually, when you put this grip on, the camera realizes that there's a grip on it and puts the fan on, of course. And puts a new setting in the various settings called cooling fan settings. Let me click on that. There's a few settings in here. There's off, there's on, and there's on at high speed. So it's kind of ridiculous. This is orgasmic. Well, every one of these should have a fan. Yeah. It was only blowing out one of the channels. That's weird. Yeah, and this is definitely the sucky portion right here. So, yeah. It has a freaking fan in it, which means it can record forever. Or at least as long as the batteries last for, which is about 2 hours. I think it was almost exactly 2 hours. It was like 2 hours, 1 minute, and a couple seconds until the batteries ran out. The 6Ps anyway, because it wouldn't let me record. Interestingly, it wouldn't let me record 4K 60 with the NHs or the off-brand NHs. So, yeah, that was weird. But actually, don't use off-brand Canon batteries anyway, because what will happen is some of them, they're not smart enough. Especially the ones that have a USB port on them, like that can't charge from the camera. Those will actually make the R5C crash when it runs out of battery power. It will never actually run out of battery power. It will never turn off. It will never stop your recording, which means your recording will be ever corrupted in that state. And you have to remove the battery in order to turn off the camera, because it doesn't turn off if you flip it to the off position. Yeah, that's something I found out the hard way, so we return those, presto. So I'm going to cycle between disappointing and very great things about this camera. First, let's get the disappointing out of the way. This does not have a stereo microphone, so you will have to add either external audio, this is actually still mono audio, or add a stereo microphone to the top of it, which is actually what I've done with the R5C that I'm recording with. So, you know, it doesn't sound like my voice is all coming from one place. Actually, it should, because it's a directional stereo microphone, but you get the room sound. But with a mono microphone, which is there, you don't get that effect at all. You just can't hear the room sound. And it sounds really, really closed in and really awful. But I think they did actually save money by only doing a mono microphone. Because on the R5C, it has a mono microphone. It's only used for video, but it also has another microphone on the back of the camera that you use to record little WAV files to go with your pictures. This has that functionality, but it doesn't have two microphones. It just has the one on the top, which I guess is used for both things, so that's worse. Even worse than just being only able to use one microphone, because now the microphone for both purposes is on the frickin' top of the camera. No need for that. You could just put two microphones on the front, as they did for every other camera on this line, and then put a, monaural mic right frickin' there for speech. Not that hard. Not sure why they got rid of yet another microphone. I guess they were done fooling around and just decided to not fight the feeling anymore and just disappoint their customers in the way that they should have in the first place. But anyway, one thing that is great about this camera, or actually two great things, is it can take all your, Canon RF mount lenses and RFS lenses. Pretty much everything else is the same as the R5C. I mean, some things have obviously been slightly moved from here to there or something. However, this does actually have frickin' finally full HDMI. Look at that. It has a full HDMI. Canon could have done this from the very start, but they decided not to, and I don't know why, because my Canon R5C, which is video-centric, doesn't have a full HDMI, and this gets it? A camera that isn't video-centric? At least it has a fan. Okay, that was a little bit much. But yeah, this has a full HDMI port on it, and why is that so infuriating to me, and why am I so ecstatic about this? Well, it's because having a full HDMI port means you can use a full HDMI port, and it won't break off like the smaller ones do. So you don't have to use any of these godforsaken things. This is a mini HDMI connector right here. And this, which I'm definitely not going to be able to focus on, is a micro HDMI connector. It's about the size of micro USB actually. Here is a 3.5mm headphone jack to compare. Yeah, it's pretty freaking tiny. And that being so tiny also means it's gonna break off instantly. No matter what you do, no matter what cables you use, your camera will become a pumpkin eventually, unless you just never use an external display with it, which for many professionals is bad news. But with this camera, that won't happen because it has full HDMI, not any of this micro HDMI bullshit that started on these cameras. This is a dirty consumer camera that my mom bought for Africa. Can't open, dumbass, I hate these things. There, see? Micro HDMI. It's actually smaller than micro USB. That's kind of nuts. And that's why it breaks off so fast. That same connector is what my R5C has, and I hate it to death. It never works. And this R5C is basically brand new as well. So the fact that the R5C doesn't have full HDMI means that this is just petty nonsense. I don't know why they put it on here if they didn't put it on the R5C. But I'm ecstatic that it's here, because that means they have acknowledged their mistakes and actually are doing right by their customers a little bit now, instead of just screwing them off. Also, the fan. That's nice. Being able to actually use your camera professionally for long periods of time. That's great. That should be in every camera that doesn't have great thermals. That's in my class, a design defect, actually. If your camera doesn't have great thermals and it doesn't have a way to cool itself, that is by definition a design defect and should be classified as one. So yeah, also, this does have the same power adapter as the R5C does for USB-C, so if you pull up this flap, there's the USB-C right there, and well, it's actually not really clear to me if the PDE one will work with this. My guess is not, so you should really just get the PDE 2, which of course costs freaking $350 for some reason, even though it's literally just a USB-C 65 watt PD power delivery power adapter. So that's really freaking stupid. It's like a MacBook charger, just worse. So I don't know why it costs that much, but again, the grip costs $350 too, so I'd actually classify the grip as worth it, because again, it has a freaking fan, and the camera's not really complete without that, because, well, let me actually show you how the air gets from one place to another in the camera. So you might have guessed that this is the intake. No, that vent on the bottom is not the intake, although that is the outtake, but that's not the intake. The intake is actually, this, on the front of the grip. But how does that get here? Well, it's actually pretty freaking simple. They just, smash the grip into the camera, and there's a little gasket, and that's how the air gets from, well, the grip to inside the camera. and then it's vented through this hole, of course. So I'm gonna run out of battery on my R5II soon, so I'm gonna outro this video. But before that, I have to acknowledge this. This is a bigger viewfinder than normal. In fact, this is bigger than all the other, I think, R-series cameras out, so that's pretty cool. I'm not sure why that's so big, or if that even has any advantage, but that is a wider view in the cap, I guess. Make of that what you will. But anyways, guys, this is Edward Redux. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next live stream, short, or video. Whatever that may be. And I'll see you all next time. See ya. Actually says I have 5 minutes. I'm very glad it warned me. That's actually a very good warning thing. Thank you, Canon, for the R5C firmware update. Damn.